Hello everyone, welcome back to this episode of Not Just Games. I'm Joey. Today, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite characters in For Honor Marching Fire, the Shaolin Monk. The Shaolin Monk is a warrior or character class that's no stranger to gamers. The bold, stoic character is the practitioner of Shaolin Kung Fu, lauded by popular sayings in Chinese folklore as the progenitor for most modern Chinese martial arts. Ever heard of Wing Chun, the 5 animal styles, Wushu, or perhaps the Ip Man franchise? These are testaments of Shaolin Kung Fu influence prevalent in Chinese martial arts, elevated to a household familiar thanks to the advance of Kung Fu fighting movies such as Wing Chun and Wushu. Sometimes portrayed as fighting monks that recite the iconic Buddhist chant Namo Amitofo after a sick combo, like Shaolin from For Honor Marching Fire. These warrior monks are staples in your run-of-the-mill fighting games. But have you ever wondered about the real Shaolin? It is known that monks ascribe to peace and harmony. So, what's up with these warrior monks? Warriors cannot really evade blood spilling, can they? Why did those peace-advocating Shaolin monks have the necessity to take up arms? The answer lies in the history of the Shaolin Temple. Located in the Dengfeng district of Henan province, the Shaolin Temple snugly graces the slopes of sacred Mount Song, one of the 4 sacred mountains of China. Since time immemorial, Chinese religious tradition has designated mountain peaks divine powers. No matter the faith, religious pilgrimage often converge on mountainous hotspots. Legend has it, a Buddhist monk from India named Buddhabhadra arrived in China during the Northern Wei dynasty and taught Hinayana Buddhism to the populace. Emperor Xiaowen took a liking to Buddhabhadra and built him a monastery that later would be known to us as the Shaolin Temple. However, there were no martial arts involved in the teachings back then. Some 30 years later, another monk from India, Bodhidharma, came into the scene. When he first set foot in Shaolin, he was denied admittance by the abbot. He decided to meditate somewhere around there and did so for 9 years in a cave near Wuru Peak, eventually attaining enlightenment. After that, he is eventually permitted entry, and he introduced the concept of Chan or Zen Buddhism to Shaolin. Bodhidharma noticed that most of the learned Shaolin monks are physically unfit, hunched at the tables from dawn to dusk copying scriptures and such. It did come as no surprise. So he said to them, "Let me show you something awesome from my 9 years of meditation." He then taught them a series of choreographed movements and deep breathings designed as an exercise routine to maintain his health when he was meditating. This can be said to be the beginning of Shaolin martial arts. The exercise techniques later evolved into Tai Chi Chuan and numerous barehanded fighting methods like Kung Fu. But don't Buddhist monks wear long, flowery robes? Yes, but that's when they're not in fight mode. Traditionally, Buddhist monks of Southeast Asia wore saffron robes, named so for its yellow-orange color, which are usually donned during ceremonies. It's also known as the kashaya and is worn over sleeve robes tied at the front by Chinese Buddhist monks. The sleeved robes were like the ones worn by Taoist scholars. In China, the kashaya is dyed in a more subdued, muted color. Bright yellow is still favored though, since it's considered an auspicious color in Chinese culture. On the other hand, the hero Shaolin from For Honor Marching Fire represents the temple's more laid-back daily core attire. He wore a sleeveless robe tied at the front and kung fu pants, wielding the iconic Shaolin weapon, the staff. Shaolin is also overdressed, unlike his real-world Shaolin monk brethren. What's interesting is how the game developer paid attention to details by putting 6 dots on Shaolin's head. The dots are known as the Jieba, a sacred mark placed on a Shaolin monk by his masters. Shaolin monks bearing the Jieba are those who have completed their training. Each dot signifies one of the fundamental rules of conduct observed by Shaolin monks. The Jieba ceremony is like a graduation ceremony. At least several months of meditation and preparation are required prior. And the ceremony itself is a long and painful process where the incense sticks were left to slowly burn until the dots were tattooed on the skin. The ceremony was banned until 2007 and to date, only a handful of Shaolin monks bear the Jieba mark. Franco Testani, an Italian Shaolin monk, famously known as 师傅食言饭, is the only Westerner to have received the Jieba. In games, Shaolin monk characters are often gender-locked as a male, but according to Shaolin's current modern-day abbot, Shi Yongxin, there has always been an unbroken line of female nuns since the founding of the temple. As told by him to Huffpost, the nunnery is not a large part of the Shaolin Temple, but I want to emphasize that it has always been there. And legend has it, Wing Chun, one of the most well-known Kung Fu styles, was also taught by a Shaolin nun. And now, let's take a look at the turbulent timelines of Shaolin. The city of Luoyang, situated 30 miles northwest of Shaolin, had functioned as the epicenter of government rule for most of the medieval period. The proximity to this administrative hub somewhat opened the doors of wealth to Shaolin, in the form of patronage from devout rulers and its nobilities. However, the Shaolin Temple tasted its first destruction at the hands of Emperor Wu in 574 AD. In Emperor Wu's mind, religions such as Buddhism and Taoism are becoming too powerful and too wealthy to his liking. He then issued an imperial edict to abolish both from the lands and even banned worship of minor deities whose cults were not registered with the government. Fortunately, in 589 AD, Emperor Jingwen in the northern Zhou dynasty decided to revive Buddhism, and consequently the Shaolin was rebuilt and restored. Over time, the Shaolin monks' prowess in martial arts paved their way into warfare. By rule, Buddhism prohibits violence. 不杀生, the first of the 5 Buddhist precepts, forbids the killing of all living beings, including animals. It is most likely that the difficulties of the period forced Shaolin to take up arms, particularly in the final phase of the decline of the Sui dynasty. In the 610s, they were said to have prevented an assault by bandits by arming themselves and retaliating. However, there were also reports of times when Shaolin monks are recruited to participate in a military conquest by the government, such as the return to Allegiance Army, which under the command of Chinese explorer Zhang Yichao brought Tulufan under Chinese rule. It is widely believed that the golden era of Shaolin Temple spans over the Tang and the Ming dynasties. At the early stages of Tang dynasty, 13 Shaolin monks prevented Prince Li Shiming's forces from suffering a heavy blow by capturing Wang Shichong's nephew, General Wang Renze. The team of armed monks delivered him to the prince. Wang Shichong was an enemy warlord who aspired to establish his own empire. To appreciate the Shaolin monks' heroic assist in this campaign, the dynasty gifted them property rights. It's also reported that during the Ming dynasty, Shaolin Temple maintained a military force of 2,500 warrior monks. The studies of meditation, weaponry, and Qigong were quite industrious then. In 1644, Manchurian invaders took over China, putting an end to the Ming dynasty and replacing it with the Qing dynasty. Though at first the Shaolin remained neutral, it can no longer be, as the number of refugees seeking sanctuary at the temple compounded day by day. Sure enough, it soon transformed into the center of resistance against the ruling government. The Qing government took swift action and the Shaolin Temple was destroyed. The temple was razed to the ground, many invaluable treasures and sacred texts lost. Life was forfeited en masse. According to popular legend, only 5 warrior monks made it out of the carnage. They went into hiding but continued the spread of Shaolin Kung Fu through disciples all over the nation. One of the fugitive Shaolin warriors was a nun that goes by the name of Mui. Mui was the one who taught Shaolin Kung Fu to Yim Wing Chun. As the story goes, Wing Chun was pressured by the local bully to marry him. Having had enough, Wing Chun took matters into her own hands and accepted the offer to learn Kung Fu from Mui. Later, Wing Chun developed her master's techniques into a system called Wing Chun Kung Fu, also known as Wing Chun. Martial arts were outlawed in China until the early 20th century. A revolt led by Dr. Sun Yat-sen ended the reign of the Qing dynasty in 1911. Secret Kung Fu previously passed from masters to disciples were beginning to be taught openly. However, the clutches of turbulent times were strong. China's civil war in the 20s fought between the communist forces of Mao Zedong and the nationalists led by Chiang Kai-shek, further threw Shaolin into hot soup. This time around it's caused by the Shaolin's neutral stand. In 1928, the Shaolin Temple was set on fire by warlord General Shi Yousan. He did so believing that the temple was used as a command base by his enemy. around 200 Shaolin monks perished defending the temple. Shaolin's precious heritage, safekeeper, the library, was burned to scorched ruins. The temple was said to remain ablaze for 40 days, leaving only 10% of it unscathed. With the execution of Chairman Mao's Cultural Revolution, martial arts were once again banned. The 1966 exercise specifically zeroed on religious orders, and Shaolin Temple is no exception. In fact, Shaolin Temple became its primary target. About 5 Shaolin monks were present on the temple ground when Chairman Mao's Red Guard army stormed in and arrested them. The monks were shackled, forced to wear placards detailing their crimes, dragged to the street. They were subjected to further humiliation by public flogging, followed by being paraded along the streets with people throwing garbage at them. The monks were then jailed. Cultural Revolution stripped the Shaolin Temple walls of its Buddhist scriptures, allowing thieves to break in, and ultimately leaving it looted and forsaken. However, the government soon realized that there's a need for martial arts tradition. They also came to appreciate the fact that temples have the potential to generate revenue via tourism. Well, since Shaolin Kung Fu is considered to be too powerful, Wushu was introduced in its place. The Shaolin Temple was officially opened to the general public in 1974, in line with the government's new foreign policy. By then, only 11 old monks were left. If it weren't for the sudden shot of fame and the first ever Hong Kong movie filmed at the temple, it would have been the end of the road for Shaolin. Starring Jet Li, a Wushu champion, the 1982 movie Shaolin Temple was loosely based on the Li Shimin's incident. The movie not only helped ease the stigma permeating the Shaolin since the Cultural Revolution, but also guided the world's eyes to its long-lost charisma. Shaolin's latest abbot, Shi Yongxin, further aided the return of Shaolin back into the arms of recognition, who was ordained in 1999, went all out to bring back Shaolin's former glory and much, much more. Shi Yongxin organized an unprecedented ceremony to celebrate the 1500th anniversary of the Shaolin establishment. He also sued a sausage company for using the temple's name in their advertising, emphasizing that it clashes with the temple's vegetarian stand. By then, the world's starting to wake up from its sleep on Shaolin. Other endeavors by the abbot, like promoting Shaolin's way of life and inciting tourism in the heart of Kung Fu's sacred place, leads to the gazetting of the monastery and its pagoda forest as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2010. Shi Yongxin is now famously known as China's CEO monk for its efforts in marrying Buddhism to commercialization. And there we have it, folks, a brief walkthrough on Shaolin. I hope that you can appreciate Shaolin in a much different light now. To be able to feel his pain, trials, tribulations, and perseverance. Give that extra feel when you meet him in the game world. In trying times such as now, perhaps Shaolin can provide you with a respite that you don't know you might need. That's all for today. If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video and stay safe.